All right. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? Today we have a very important interview that we are conducting today, so we'll just jump right on in. Since the beginning of time, artists have been history's greatest recorders. Join the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library's Engage2020 campaign for our Art and Activism series as we offer a glimpse into a few artists who have shared their talents and even their lives to create social and civic change. Through this discussion, we will learn about Alvin C. Jacobs Jr.'s creative approach as he offers his audience a personal view of countless protests through imagery. We hope through this experience, you feel empowered to use your own voices, talents, and influence to promote social and civic change. My name is Shannon Page. I work for the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. I'm joined by my colleague Sabrina Robinson, who will be managing our technological and support chat. If there are any questions or comments, please utilize the chat services and they will be addressed promptly. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with Alvin C. Jacobs Jr., a well-renowned photographer and image activist. Good evening, Alvin.
Good evening.
All right. So Alvin is a native of Rockford, Illinois. He is a professional photographer and image activist currently living in Charlotte, North Carolina. His work has been showcased and commissioned all throughout the Queen City. His talent for capturing the heart of his subjects on camera has led him to being known as one of Charlotte Magazine's Charlatans of the Year and Creative Loafing's Best Photographer of 2018. So we'll jump right on into it. This is one of the most prolific videos that I've seen in a very long time. And I do want to warn you that this video just contains some graphic imagery. So if you are with smaller children, this may not be suitable for young viewers.
What, from your perspective, just tell us the first hour, the first 30 minutes.
From my perspective, the first hour or the first 30 minutes, it was a lot of marching. There were some trainings in the beginning.
So November 4th, Refuse Fascism is calling. It's a nationwide organization. We have chapters in Philly, in Boston, in Atlanta, in LA, in the Bay Area, and in New York City and other cities that I'm probably leaving out.
Then just all of a sudden, there was a group of, I want to call them neo-Nazis, fascists, whatever they want to call themselves, started marching alongside a church. So they marched, they made their announcements, and then they got information and prepared to leave.
I can't walk on this guy. You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not replace us! You will not!
Well, as they were leaving, the sidewalk turned into a bottleneck. They had the entire street to navigate, but they walked through the sidewalk. Well, there was an altercation between them and counter-protesters. A woman was savagely beaten, brutally beaten, and it took the police officers approximately 5 minutes to arrive on the scene, even though they were less than 100 feet away.
Yeah, go after They got me all in my head. Strike this. Baby, you're right.
So, things progressively got worse. From peaceful protests to training to all-out altercations to all-out battles, and I mean multiple. There were more altercations than I could even keep up with, and I'm just one person.
How did it make you feel?
Afraid. I've encountered and documented plenty of protests throughout the United States of America. This is the first time I feared for my life, and I don't say that lightly. I don't say that in terms of law enforcement. I feared for my life. I had a gun, they didn't. I was afraid. Yes, I didn't have a gun. They did, and I was afraid, but there were multiple guns. It wasn't even just the fact that they were armed. It was you couldn't tell who was who. They actually had one of the men inside the parking garage. It was maybe 5-on-1. I couldn't see from the inside, but from the photos that I've seen after the fact, they had him inside the parking garage by himself, and they were beating him with sticks. I mean, they beat him bloody. I mean, he had gashes on his head. I think he's been released from the hospital and things like that. He had a GoFundMe. I believe he raised $100,000. And the footage from that really details how it started.
You have that footage?
Oh, I do have that footage. I absolutely have that footage. And I have it from a wide perspective. I didn't get really, really close because I wanted to show the law enforcement's reaction and the crowd's reaction. When you get too close sometimes, you kind of lose the narrative. So I just kind of stayed back and just panned wide.
I'm not going to say you have to call yourself what's West Africa. Come get some, buddy. Come get some.
We have to stand up for the real America. There's a complete demographic and a group of people who, in spite of the marginalization, the criminalization, the victimization of millions of United States citizens, they're shouting and yelling and screaming and hollering and crying that they will not be replaced. You will not replace us. Well, first and foremost, this is our America. Our America isn't based upon hate. Maybe in your mind, but not in reality. There were too many people that risked their lives, that risked their livelihood, that were hurt, that could have been killed. 3 people were killed, 1 directly and 2 indirectly, based upon your hate. See, this isn't your America anymore. Maybe back in the day, maybe you wish that things were the way that they used to be, where you controlled everything, where everyone feared you, where everyone paid homage, where everyone bowed down to you, but that's not the case anymore. This America, this is the real America. This is what's making America great. You're making people better. Thank you for that aspect. But you will not replace us. You will not replace the real Americans who stood up against tyranny, who stood up against fear, who stood up against terrorism. You had guns, you had bats, you had weapons, vests, tactical gear, and you were pretty well organized. But we stood up to you, and we'll do it again, and we'll do it collectively, and we'll do it individually. It doesn't matter if it comes from the top down. It doesn't matter if it comes from the bottom up. This is what America stands for, and we will defeat hate. We will defeat tyranny. We will defeat this reckless abandon and violence being forced upon people who don't look like you. This is our America, and we're going to make it better. We're going to make it great. There's nothing you can do about it.
Well,
Yeah.
let's try to unpack some of this. And based on the passion you showed in this video, do you consider yourself an activist? Why or why not?
I do. Because resistance is beautiful. There were one of the founders of the Gantt Center recently passed, and beautiful woman. She was an educator, a mentor, and an activist. That was on many of the tributes. Activists. We have to be proud to resist. There's absolutely nothing wrong with standing up in the face of tyranny, against disenfranchisement, against marginalization, against the eradication of communities and cultures. Absolutely. And activism is important, and resistance is beautiful.
A large amount of people living in the United States believe that racism does not exist. It ended with slavery. Have you faced any problems because of your work? And if so, elaborate, please.
The individuals who are asked about racism are usually kept inside a bubble. They have all white friends, white colleagues. They live with white people. They live in white neighborhoods. How would you know? How would you know if racism was still alive or not if you weren't actively perpetuating it? But a lot of folks want racism to go away by default, not because it's wrong, but because it makes people uncomfortable. But racism is around us every single day, and it's something that you can't necessarily see. So when Black people, specifically individuals of our age group, are saying that race, that they don't really deal with racism, it's disheartening, because it's almost like, well, what's wrong with your antennas? You don't have to embrace negativity. You don't have to respond to it. But racism is affecting every aspect of your life, with or without your permission. So yes, I have, through creativity, through art, through housing, through education. It's woven into the fiber, of our country, definitely in our city. You see individuals who look like us that are in power, but are they really in power? So racism is all around. I deal with it every single day in different aspects. I show up differently against it. I'm actively combating it, dismantling white supremacy and things of its such. But yeah, I experience it every single day. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I don't trust Black men, right? Like the young brother who was just killed the other day, they said that he tried to shake the police officer's hand a few minutes before he was killed. Wow. And he just said that he didn't really see race as an issue. He just said that, like in a post, I believe, on Facebook, and then he ended up dead at the hands of a police officer.
This is an incredible amount of information to begin unpacking, and I know that we won't cover all of it within this small program, but I definitely appreciate your work and contribution to promote civil and social change. I do want to lighten up because the video is heavy, and I do want people to have a chance to communicate with us in the chat. So please ask your questions if you have any. We will try to address them whenever we can. But let's talk about how you got into this work. You
Yeah.
are a professional photographer. That's your background. You work with NASCAR. That's one of my favorite sports. You work for the NFL, the NBA. You've even done some work on Jay-Z's 444 tour. Why add image activists to your dossier?
It wasn't on purpose. I used to ask myself what kind of man would I have been in the 1960s during the height of the civil rights era. And I wanted an answer. My parents didn't really get an opportunity to really stand up in that struggle because they, were from Rockford, Illinois. And that was one of the communities in Illinois that kind of everything skipped over. There'd never been a civil rights movement. But deep down, I was always fascinated by not just the struggle, but the work in the movement. So when I got an opportunity, when Troy Davis was killed, I was living in Rockford and I drove to Chicago about 90 miles south of Rockford. And I encountered a protest. I'd never seen a protest before in my life. I had my camera with me. I was already a professional photographer, mainly editorials and fashion and commercial work. And I just started documenting the protest. And I started reading more and studying more and researching more. And I just became fascinated by the ability to resist. And I picked it up then. So it's been almost 11 years now, going on 12. So not almost 11 years, it's almost 12 years.
All right. So outside of you witnessing your first protest, how else do you think that you become involved in this type of work, and what inspires you to continue doing this work for social change?
There was an interview that I was asked this question, how do you remain neutral? And the answer was, I can't. I'm a Black man. I have to take a stand. I have to have a critical analysis. I just can't be the camera guy. I used to consider myself a photojournalist, but I was asked again in another interview, have you ever been on assignment? And the answer was no. He said, well, technically, yes, your work is in that lane, but that's not technically what you are. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So it made sense to me to start doing the work, unpacking the work of figuring out why I was doing what I was doing. Because if I was in an altercation or in a situation, with law enforcement, they don't care if I'm a journalist or not. They don't care about your credentials or not. I have to figure it out why I'm there and what's going to make me get up and go and travel, because it was Standing Rock, Flint, Baltimore, New Brunswick, Chicago, Charlotte, all these places where I didn't live. Where's the passion? You're not getting paid for this. You aren't being commissioned to do this. So you need to figure this out. It wasn't for fame. It wasn't to get rich, because this has been financed solely, by hopes, dreams, and, some prayers. People say hopes and prayers. That's what's gotten me far. My community has gotten me far. It isn't these big checks, from institutions and commissions. I was doing this because I felt it was my job. And once I started it, I couldn't put it down.
How does your work differ from the work of some of your peers who are in photography? I know that you've added this caveat of image activists to your repertoire, but what approaches do you take that are different, and what methods that do you use that are different from people who are just at protests and taking pictures?
I believe my work is intentional. I go out of my way to protect my community, whether I live in that city or not. You won't see my work being used in a criminal case proceeding. I won't even capture an image of someone committing a felony, because even though I don't mean to aid, law enforcement, if you capture an image and, the police catch you around the corner walking to your car and they confiscate your equipment, well, now they have visual evidence, of a crime being committed and you're being used against your community. So I don't play that, if I'm doing social justice work, among our houseless population, I don't even capture their faces, not because it's against the law or anything like that, but to preserve dignity. Now, protesting isn't illegal, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's an amendment. It's a right. You can do that. But I'm very careful with who I'm documenting and how. Now, I don't have to blur your face and things like that, long before, we were wearing masks, because you're not doing anything wrong. Although in Ferguson, many individuals, I think it's about 5 right now, have been killed in mysterious circumstances, but they've all kind of been killed the same way. Darren Seals, he's the young brother right there above me, was killed a couple of years ago. And he was a frontline protester in Ferguson. So you do have to be careful with that. You do have to realize that just because you're not doing anything wrong or you're not breaking the law or anything like that, there's some individuals who aren't too happy with the work that you're doing. So when I show up because I want to not only help, but I want to control the narrative. I don't sell my images to outlets. I'm not like, okay, I'm going to take this image, I'm going to sell it, to this particular media outlet. I don't do that. I capture these images for the culture. Some I'll show, on social media, but the vast majority are in archives, and they're being prepared, for books. They're being prepared for movies. They're being prepared to control the narrative for years to come. So that's why I do it. I don't do it to get famous. I don't do it, man. My social media presence is minimal at best. I don't do it for that, because I know how dangerous it is. I know how this level of responsibility can adversely affect your life. People think it's fun, right? Oh, you're out of these protests. Do you know how many governmental watch lists I'm on, right? Like, if you're among police and they know that you're documenting them doing some things they shouldn't be doing, who do you think is the target now? It's you. Photographers don't get to come in with security and all these other things and we're being protected. We're out there with everybody else. And that's what I need people to understand. A political education is absolutely imperative if you're going to do this work. Why are you doing this work? What are you going to do with the images once captured? Where is your heart in this work? Because it can't be for money. It can't be for money. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what makes activists dangerous. The ones that, start changing, start switching up once the money comes, they become almost the enemy to the community. So I'm different because I do it because I love it. I do it because I'm called to do this work. I do it because I put everything into it. I've lost a lot of relationships. I've lost a lot of money, a lot of opportunities, but what God has for you, he has for you.
Speaking of your love of the culture, I want to talk about some of the projects that you have worked on in the Charlotte area. More importantly, welcome to Brookhill, that was commissioned, and the collection was showcased at the Harvey B. Gantt Center for American Arts and Culture in 2018. Can you talk a bit about that project, what it means to you, and how people can find out more information about it? Can you share a little bit about that project for us?
Absolutely. This project, I believe, how you will something into existence. I knew that there was something going around that was going to be offered, that was going to be available, and I spoke it into existence. The Gantt Center was gracious. I can't thank them enough for recognizing and commissioning me, because it could have been anyone. But remember, I just said what God has for you, he has for you. Our initial conversation in the conference room, I cried. I'm like, let's go. It's one thing, for someone else, to give you a green light, but when it's your own people and you're responsible for documenting your own people, and I had full autonomy. I didn't know how I was going to do it, because prior to this, the work had already existed. This was, we need you to create this. And I couldn't have been more supported. Our relationship is, one of the most important I've ever experienced, I've ever built, in my life as a creative, in my life as a man. Imagine a team of Black folks, in positions of power who not only believe in you, but they have your back, right? So I'm down. I'm going to be down. The project was something that was a long time coming. Imagine back in the day, there were only so many places where Black people could live affordably. And Brookhill was one of those neighborhoods, was one of those communities. Well, I'm not from Charlotte. I don't remember Brookhill from back in the day. I don't have any contacts in Brookhill. So I had to be very, very careful walking around with a camera, among people who may not necessarily want me around with a camera. So I spent weeks in the community without my equipment, without my gear, just walking around, just talking to people, just figuring out what it felt like to live there. I'd be there at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. I'd be there at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday. You might catch me on a porch. You may catch me, hanging out on the sidewalk. You may catch me in someone's home. It was a project that was necessary to the community. And what I'm telling you, it has changed the lives of so many. It's changed. The ownership has changed hands. And I was in a meeting with some of the most powerful men in Charlotte, and the owner was like, "Hey, Alvin, how you doing? I own Brookhill." because one company owns the land, another company owns, the buildings. There's a land lease that's been extremely controversial, but he was like, because of the work that you guys did at the Gantt Center, we're taking another look at this. So there were like 250 something families that were there that weren't going to live there too much longer. And because of the family of Brookhill, right? They let us do what we needed to do. They weren't like, hey, you know what? No, get out of here, blah, 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 blah. No, how dare you? No, it was a partnership. And without Brookhill Village itself, there's no way that I could have gotten this done. It doesn't matter how much help the Gantt had given. The community itself, they could have put a whole stop to the whole thing, but they welcomed it and they saw that I wasn't there to hurt them, not literally or figuratively, or figuratively, because sometimes that happens. You see, photographers, and they take very compromising images of people. They make all this money, and then the community is still in the position it was in before, and that's in dire straits. Well, now Brookhill is doing better. It's doing better than it was going to do. Now it's got a new lease, literally and figuratively, and things are going to start getting better for the community. Being a part of that has changed my life. If I never made another dime, right? If I never captured another image, that particular project has made me proud to be a photographer, to be a documentarian, to be a man.
That was so powerful. And that was some awesome work that you did with this project. And I know the people of Brookhill are very appreciative because, having someone to advocate for them, to step in, to, reveal their way of life, that had to have a very deep impact on that community. And we thank you for the work that you did. Another project, and while Brookhill sounds like it really is your baby, I want to talk about your first solo photography exhibition, the 3 Steps Back, a call to action, that was hosted at Davidson College. Can you elaborate on that project for us, please?
Sure. So Davidson, this amazing private college in Davidson, North Carolina, it was a conversation that I wasn't quite prepared for, because university level work is different. They have a private art center there, archivists, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready. I don't know. But the work was already great. I just didn't know how good I was in being able to deliver. So when the opportunity presented itself, of course I was ready to go, but doing a talk in front of college students, if you've never been dragged before, talk to college students. They know everything. I don't care if they're freshmen. I don't care if they're my age. They know everything. And you better have your answers together. You better be clear. You better be concise. Don't make any mistakes, because they're going to let you know about it. But that opportunity had, opened the door to so many other opportunities. When you're figuring, writing books and being able to exhibit in other places, they want to know, where have you exhibited before? They don't care how good your work is. Like, it's not about that. So where have you exhibited before? Who gave you a shot? And that resume better be pretty extensive, or nobody's going to give you your first shot. Like, well, let us know when somebody else, gives you a shot. Wait, what? I need my first shot. Yeah, that's not how it works. So my relationship with them is ongoing. It's amazing. I believe they're revisiting some other images that are part of their permanent collection. That's another great aspect of photography and as an artist. Once it's in the permanent collection, it's always going to be there. 100 years from now, you can go and you'll see this work archived. So they have several pieces of mine there that will always be in their permanent collection. So thank you to Davidson College for that look. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do continued great works in our community. But that exhibition was great. It was a talk in their theater room, and I'd never done that before. Talking about the work, and then we went outside and kind of viewed, the works that were in the gallery, and that was just, I'd never seen my work really printed like really before. So that was big.
So you also have a relationship with the Levine Museum of the New South when you introduced your No Justice, No Peace exhibit. Can you talk about that? What prompted this piece? I don't know if you could give a little backstory. We'd appreciate that.
You want the truth or what sounds good? I can give you the truth.
I want the truth. Give it to me straight. Okay. We can take it.
So the truth was, I was introduced to the Levine Museum at Duppenswat. And, it's a cultural hub, in the city of Charlotte. I'm like, I'm just, new to the city, where's the cool stuff at? And Davida Galloway was like, okay, well, you know what? You need to go to the Levine. So I lived not too far from there. I lived right in Myers Park, and I used to walk there a lot because I'm like, it's beautiful out. I'd walk there, I'd ride my bike, I'd drive whatever, but I was there a lot. And this was weeks and maybe months. I can't remember how long I had been going there, but they had kind of found out that I was a photographer. And 2016 happened, and we already had the relationship. We were going to do something later. We were going to always do an exhibition, but it was going to be something later. But then 2016 happened, and Keith Lamont Scott was killed, and the meeting was, would you have something ready to contribute? So No Justice, No Peace was, JCSU. It was picture some of the greatest minds in Charlotte at the time. From historians, from photographers, it was just collective of energy that was necessary at the time. There wasn't a place during this where people could talk. There was no dialogue. People were afraid. People were angry. There was so much frustration. There was nowhere to talk. So the civic engagement pieces, like the community pieces, were so important. There were books signing, well, not just signings. Like there were New York Times bestselling authors that were coming to the Levine centered around No Justice, No Peace. Like, are you kidding me? So they would come and we would have entire talks based around this project. So it was only supposed to be for a couple of months. We're like, okay, cool. And then it got extended and extended and extended and extended. And I think, and I'm not certain, I think this was the longest running independent exhibition they've ever had there outside of the permanent collection. It was like 2016 to like 2019. So we're talking like 3 years almost for something that was only supposed to be a few months, but it was so powerful. Not that it couldn't be replaced, but the conversations weren't done. It wasn't done being had. Like people were still being helped. There was still a mission that we were on. So this allowed the city of Charlotte a way to heal. It allowed Charlotte to be able to have conversations that were extremely uncomfortable. It'd be law enforcement on this side. It'd be, civic leaders and community leaders and clergy and artists and, people in the city that normally don't interact with each other. But I don't know, man, like walking in there every single time, I was blown away. Even though I'd seen the work, I'd created some of the work, it was so powerful because it was just a group of people who changed the landscape during a very critical time in our community. It couldn't have been done before. I believe it was Dr. Tiffany Packer from JCSU. Dr. Brenda Tyndall was a historian. It was just so much power there that I don't know if it could be duplicated, outside, of that space with the same amount of integrity, because we gave it our all and it was a great run.
All right. I'm going to change gears just a little bit to focus on how the work that you are currently doing is being implemented in the current movement for racial equality in the very hot topic of implicit bias. What about your work seeks or helps to educate the public in relation to social inequality, racial injustice, and implicit bias?
Much of the work much of what we know about the civil rights struggle over the years has been through the lens of a camera or from the ink of a pen. Many of us weren't alive then. And we've had conversations and maybe entire arguments with people. There were no slaves alive now, and there are no slavers that are alive now. What are you talking about? It's done. It's over with. And implicit bias is used to kind of sugarcoat racism. It's not implicit bias if you're racist. Like implicit bias is like, oh, there's a person, they might hurt me. Okay, that's cool. Why are you thinking that? I don't know, but you are. But we use that in lieu of training, right? Or, we need more officer training. We need more. No, you should stop killing unarmed Black people. You should probably stop doing that. We have to be careful with what words we use and what terms we use and what we allow to be disguised as hate. So what my work is doing and what it has done, it allows these conversations to be had in comfortable spaces. The work is extremely uncomfortable, but you can't walk up to someone and hold up a sign and say, hey, you're racist. They'll be, oh, wait a minute. Whoa, bro, you don't even know me. But if you're in an art gallery or you're reading a book or, you're at a talk or, you're at an exhibition and you're having these conversations with total strangers, or there's something that's going on virtually, you're able to utilize these talks and these conversations, these images in your classrooms. You're able to use these conversations in your home. And I don't mean just the fight for Black lives. I don't mean just, the movement for Black lives. There's the fight for 15. There's, heck, not too long ago, right? It was 1964, 1963, 1962, 1961, 1960, women couldn't vote. Black women could not vote. And we say it was because of other reasons, but really it was racism. So images allow us to remember that these things are real. And sometimes when I capture an image, I always document everything in color, then I edit to black and white. But if it wasn't for the fashions, some of the words are the same. I am a man. Stop killing us. These are phrases that are continuing a part of the conversation. So educating people and social justice and equity, racial injustice and implicit bias. Sometimes people don't want to hear what you have to say. They want to be shown. Show us what the problem is, because they know what it is. They just don't want to do the work. So sometimes photography and videography and even, the written word, it helps to add to the education. It helps to add to the political education. It absolutely adds to the conversation and the narrative that we have more in common. If it wasn't for, again, imagery and, some of the things that have been recorded, we would think that every single city in America is on the other side of Charlottesville, when Charlottesville actually resisted. The people who were fighting against, the alt-right and, the neo-Nazis and all those folks, a lot of those were citizens of Charlottesville. So without these images, without this information, without controlling the narrative, we think that everyone hates everyone, and that's just not the case. There's a lot of people who do. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of fear. But most Americans, regardless of what's going on right now, are good, decent, God-fearing people. But without this information, we think that everyone's against everyone, and that's adding fuel to the fear. And that's just not the case in reality.
So we are getting closer to our last couple of questions, and I want to highlight some questions for some of our younger audiences. We must highlight these as they will be the torchbearers in this next leg of the race against racism. And what are some of the ways that young people can, take your work into consideration as far as using it as an effective tool or action for change in their own communities?
So my introduction into social justice work was studying the images of Gordon Parks, studying his trajectory into creativity, into being a Renaissance man, into being a composer, into being an amazing photographer, into being one of the most sought after icons, during the civil rights struggle. But what young people can do is get outside, and I don't mean like just walk around outside. I mean, when you have the opportunity to see something, you have to do something. I've been asked more oftentimes than I can remember, what's the best camera? What's the best camera? Well, it's what you have. Whatever you have is the best. It doesn't matter what you can go get. It doesn't matter what you have at home. It doesn't matter what you're going to purchase. The best tool you have is the one you have with you. But young people can absolutely become involved politically. I don't care if you can't even vote yet, right? I want you to get educated on who are the individuals that make up the political landscape of your city. Figure out why your street looks different than a street on the other side of town. Civic engagement is important. Social media can be used for younger people, right, that can't vote. Figure out what's going on, not just in these debates, not when there's a hot topic, but figure out what's going on in your community and what you can do to lend a hand. There are people that need to eat. There are people that need someplace to live. There are people who could use help through every other aspect of their life. And the youth are going to be the next channel, the next platform of when we're older and there's no longer any use for us. We're going to need our babies, and our younger people to already be up to speed. So video games are great, and watching television is great, but these books, right? And the internet can be used to educate yourself, not just to learn how to use social media for entertainment, but we need more youth-led organizations. In my hometown of Rockford, Illinois, what's really shaking up the landscape of systemic racism is young people. These young kids are on fire. Because it's not us. It's not the brothers who are, in their mid 40s. I'm middle age now. We're going into our 50s. It's the youth who are picking up the mantle, right? Who are learning what's necessary to be strong. We will do everything we can to fight, to help you fight, because what you're doing is important. Anytime I see young men and young women and non-binary and folks who are just outside getting busy, it makes my heart just fill with gratitude, because I didn't have that ability, right? I didn't have that ability because I didn't have the political education. I'm like, man, I didn't know that this was happening. The internet right now and what we're doing right now is setting the pace for a better world. So what these young people can do is, when you see a protest, right? That's just one aspect. Learn what your forefathers did, right? Learn who these people were that came before you, that were doing all these great works, and why we do what we do. It doesn't have to be a man. It doesn't have to be a woman. It could just be a person, right? Figure out why Gordon Parks was so great. Figure out why Fannie Lou Hamer was so great, right? Like, figure this out. Like there are people that are alive right now, that are bell hooks, that are doing all these great works. Pick up a book. Once you start listening to these people, you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that Huey P. Newton wasn't the only one. Chairman Fred Hampton wasn't the only one. There are some brothers and sisters that are really out here making these things shake, and they're still alive today. So studying the work of your ancestors, studying the work that is current right now, will allow our youth to get in position to make their community better. They need to know why their parents are taking off work to vote. They need to realize how important civic duty is. Certain things don't work. Certain things won't work. Well, guess what? If you don't put the work in, they're absolutely not going to work. There's some scams. There's some fixes that are in. Of course there are. People are going to do what they're going to do. That's fine. But guess what's going to happen if you do nothing? And that's nothing. And there's a statement, I think it says, all it takes is for, evil to thrive, or something like that, is for good men to do nothing. All it takes is for really bad things to start happening, is for good people to do nothing. So figuring out why voting is important, one aspect. Figuring out why a political education is important, cool. Figuring out why becoming physically stronger. Figuring out why it's important for you to learn how to hunt, for you to learn how to fish, for you to learn how to grow food, for you to learn how to protect your credit, right? Little things that are going to come into play. I would rather children learn that long before they turn 18. I would rather they learn that, in elementary school. They're not going to be taught that in school, so it's left up to us, their village, to educate them.
Absolutely. So we have one final question.
Okay.
If someone is interested in learning about image activism, learning or getting into the field, how can they connect with you for potential advice, best practices, or mentorships?
I didn't realize it was a field. There's people doing this?
I think you've created a genre here.
I'm not. I am on the shoulders of my ancestors. But yes, first and foremost, my website is alvincjacobsjr.com. So it's basically my name, .com. I can be found there. My social media is connected there. My Twitter is ACJPhoto. My Instagram is ACJPhoto. And my Facebook is Alvin C. Jacobs Jr. But I am absolutely open to all of the things that you mentioned. I didn't have a mentor in photography. I just kind of figured it out as I went. But the longer I've been in it, I realize how vast this community is and how important relationships are. There are some young men and women who are out here just creating amazing work. And if there's anything that I can do to anyone that is in contact with me, consider it done. I'm not going to act funny. I'm not going to be too busy. I have to protect my energy, of course. But if there's anything that I can do to anyone interested in this work, I'm here for you. That's one of my jobs, is going to be able to not just pass the mantle, because it's not mine to give. It's to allow individuals to be safe. It's to allow individuals to figure out what to do with the work and how important the work is, and maybe some of the tools that are involved. But yes, absolutely. My website is maybe the easiest way. Social media, ACJ Photo, on most of the platforms. I'm not on TikTok or anything like that because I'm old and I don't really know how it works. But Twitter, IG, Facebook, and my website. But Potential advice. I need you to be safe when you're outside. Don't just think that because you have a camera, that you're everyone's friend or everyone thinks that, you're a great person. It could be the opposite. This particular image, this young lady was with Unicorn Riot. It's a independent media outlet, and she was right there when the young man was getting worked over in the garage, and she was just overwhelmed with grief. We deal with this. For the first time in my life, I'm going through therapy, right? I'm 46 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm undergoing therapy because I have to. You have to take care of yourself. Best practices, make sure that you're able to show up in the world. Don't do things that are going to jeopardize your freedom. Don't do things that are going to jeopardize your life and your livelihood unless you have a plan. You want to jump out there and, be a social justice photographer, you can get your head knocked off, literally and figuratively. You need to know the rules. You need to learn the laws. That doesn't mean anybody can't do it, because you absolutely can. And we need more people documenting the movement, not just protests, but social justice as a whole. But we need you to do it skillfully. We need you to do it compassionately and with integrity. So that's where the political education comes from. If I can be of any assistance, absolutely. I'm here for you. But we can't just be out here running around raggedy, because that's how people get hurt, including yourself. So mentorships, I'm available. I've worked with CMS. I had a wonderful program with the Gantt Museum. It was so great. It was a I don't know what you call it. It's called I think it was the first one that they had done in a long time. But I worked with, I think, 5 or 6 schools, within CMS, and I think I had a month with each school, because there were, or maybe it's 2 weeks with each school, but in their art programs. So it was just really interesting to see these youngsters, right? These teenagers really being passionate about art, about photography, about just ways that they could express themselves. So I would love to do that again. What is it called? It's called a residency. I had a residency with CMS, okay. And that was in partnership with the Gantt Center. It was so great. These art teachers were amazing, and I'm sitting here like, I wish I had this. I wish I paid attention to this, when I was in high school. Art was the farthest thing from my mind. I was in wood shop. I was trying to figure out, how to build a birdhouse or something. I don't know. It wasn't a creative bone in my body then. So I kind of missed out on some years. But what I'm trying to do is make up for lost time. It's been 11 years nonstop. So here's to 11 more, maybe, hopefully. I'll be, an elder statesman, but, still kicking.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your candor, your vulnerability, and your talents with us this evening. I want to read one of the comments that came through that was so warming and heartfelt. This is from Becca Worthington. She writes that this has been the most optimistic, inspiring, wonderful discussion. She's loved getting to experience this tonight, and she would like to thank you so much for sharing your talent and passion. And she wants to share everything you said in your answer when we were discussing highlighting the youth with every team that she knows, and she wants you to keep up the important work because it's so amazing.
That means a lot. Thank you. Because sometimes you just don't know if you're making a difference. I go out and I try to do what I know how to do, but I'm not getting paid for it. I'm not earning a living doing it, right? I have to find other ways. And it's like, why are you doing this when you could just be a celebrity photographer, right? If I remove my political hat, my opinion, I could be in a lot more spaces, right? I could be everywhere, but I can't stop. So it's heavy sometimes, but it's a responsibility that I wouldn't trade for the world. It's something that is going to allow me to leave a legacy. It's going to allow me to be in conversation. Hopefully, if I can continue at this level and beyond, but I really want to inspire, this generation and future generations that you can be fearless in doing this work. It's not just about the money. It's just not about, the notoriety. I mean, I've done it scared most of my career. I've done it broke most of my career. I wasn't getting rich, but my heart is enriched. I know that don't pay the bills. I know they don't pay the bills. I know that. But when I'm telling you, I feel good about my life's path, my trajectory. I feel great about that right now. I didn't have that before when I was making way more money, you know, and I mean, they aren't mutually exclusive. You can make money, right? You can be successful and be a creative and be an artist. I'm working on that now. You know, it's been a long time coming. You know, I've been putting in a lot of work, you know, it's time to start, you know, cashing out, you know, popping new shoes or something going on. But this work is important. And I really appreciate that comment, Becca. Thank you. Thank you for that.
So we want to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us this evening. We here at the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library Engage2020 campaign for art and activism appreciate your efforts in the community for always promoting awareness, equality, activism, and the fight for social justice and disparity relief throughout our communities with your artistic lens. One day soon, we hope that the world will see things as transparently as you do. And we would like to invite everyone watching this evening to join us next Thursday for our conversations with dance duo Twin Nation and director/entertainer Karish Farrell. That's all we have tonight. Thank you so much. If you have any more comments for the chat section, please let us know. We'll stick around for a couple more minutes, but it was a pleasure meeting you this week and interviewing with you this evening, Alvin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. This was great.
After the fact, they had him inside the parking garage by himself, and they were beating him with sticks. I mean, they beat him bloody. I mean, he had gashes on his head. I think he's been released from the hospital and things like that. He had a GoFundMe. I believe he raised $100,000. And the footage from that really details how it started.
You have that footage?
Oh, I do have that footage. I absolutely have that footage. And I have it from a wide perspective. I didn't get really, really close because I wanted to show the law enforcement's reaction and the crowd's reaction. When you get too close sometimes, you kind of lose the narrative. So I just kind of stayed back and just panned wide. I'm not going to say you have to call yourself West Africa.